I never thought I'd be the kind of woman who would confess to something like this. But here I am, telling you exactly how it all began. How I became the woman who made a married man betray everything he once held sacred. It started at the Meridian Grand Hotel in downtown Chicago during the National Marketing Summit last October. I was 29, riding high on my recent promotion to senior marketing executive at Henderson and Associates. The conference was supposed to be about networking, learning new strategies, expanding my professional horizons. Instead, it became the night that changed everything. I'd just finished a grueling presentation on digital consumer behavior when I decided to unwind at the hotel's rooftop bar, Skyline. The place was elegant, all glass and chrome, with panoramic views of the city lights stretching endlessly into the night. I ordered a Manhattan and found a quiet corner table, finally allowing myself to breathe after 3 days of nonstop meetings. That's when Adam walked in. Even now, months later, I can still picture that moment with crystal clarity. He moved through the crowd with this quiet confidence that immediately caught my attention. Tall, maybe 6'2", with salt and pepper hair that suggested wisdom and experience. His navy suit was perfectly tailored, expensive, but not showy. There was something magnetic about him, the way he carried himself, the slight smile that played at the corners of his mouth as he surveyed the room. Our eyes met across the bar, and I felt this jolt of recognition, though I'd never seen him before in my life. He held my gaze for just a moment longer than politeness required, then made his way to the bar. I watched him order whiskey neat, and couldn't help but notice the gold band on his left ring finger catching the ambient light. Married. Of course he was. I should have looked away then. Should have finished my drink and gone back to my room. Instead, I found myself studying his profile, the strong line of his jaw, the way his fingers wrapped around his glass. When he glanced my way again, I didn't look away. He approached my table with the kind of casual confidence that comes from years of closing deals and commanding boardrooms. Mind if I join you? His voice was warm, cultured, with just a hint of a Boston accent. I'm Adam. Sophia, I replied, gesturing to the empty chair across from me. Please sit. As he settled into his seat, I caught his scent, something expensive and understated, cedar and bergamot, with just a hint of vanilla. Everything about him screamed success, sophistication, danger. Long day? He asked, and somehow the simple question felt loaded with possibility. The longest, I admitted, taking a sip of my Manhattan. You're here for the conference too, guilty as charged. Though I have to say, this is the first session I've actually enjoyed. His eyes crinkled when he smiled, and I felt something flutter in my chest. We fell into conversation as easily as breathing. Adam was vice president of strategic development at Morrison Industries, a Fortune 500 consulting firm. He was brilliant, the kind of man who could discuss market volatility 1 minute and quote Hemingway the next. He asked about my work with genuine interest, leaning forward when I described my latest campaign for sustainable fashion brands. "You're passionate about it," he observed, and something in his tone made me feel seen in a way I hadn't experienced in years. "It's more than just selling products," I explained, surprised by how easily the words flowed. "It's about changing how people think, how they consume, how they see themselves in the world." "Spoken like a true revolutionary," Adam said, raising his glass. "To changing the world, one campaign at a time." We clinked glasses, and his fingers brushed mine briefly. The contact was electric, sending warmth shooting up my arm from the way his breath caught slightly. I knew he felt it too. As the evening wore on, our conversation grew more intimate. Adam told me about growing up in Cambridge, his Harvard MBA, his rise through the corporate ranks, but there was something melancholy in his voice when he mentioned his personal life. 15 years of marriage, he said quietly, twisting the wedding ring around his finger. "Sometimes I wonder where all that time went. I should have changed the subject, should have made an excuse and left. Instead, I found myself leaning closer." "That sounds lonely," I said softly. Adam's eyes met mine, and in them I saw a depth of sadness that made my heart ache. "Sarah and I, we've grown apart. We're more like roommates now than husband and wife. We go through the motions, attend the same social functions, sleep in the same bed, but we're strangers." The way he said his wife's name, Sarah, with such resignation, such quiet defeat, told me everything I needed to know about the state of his marriage. "We've been separated for 8 months now," he continued, his voice barely above a whisper, "living in the same house, but leading completely separate lives. The divorce papers are sitting in my lawyer's office. I just haven't had the courage to sign them yet." My pulse quickened. Separated, the word hung between us like a lifeline, offering justification for the attraction that was building with every passing moment. "That must be incredibly difficult," I said, meaning it. "Being in limbo like that." "It is." Adam's hand moved across the table, his fingers stopping just inches from mine. "But tonight, talking with you, I feel more alive than I have in years." The air between us crackled with tension. I was acutely aware of everything. The way the candlelight flickered across his features, the sound of his breathing, the heat radiating from his body. When I looked down, I noticed his wedding ring again, but somehow it seemed less significant now, just a piece of marriage that was already over in everything but name. "Sophia," he said my name like a prayer, and I felt myself melting. Our hands finally touched, his fingers intertwining with mine across the small table. His skin was warm, slightly rough from years of hard work despite his executive status. The simple contact sent shivers down my spine. "This is dangerous," I whispered, but I didn't. "I know," Adam replied, his thumb tracing small circles on my palm, "but I can't seem to care." We sat like that for several minutes, holding hands in the dim light of the bar, both of us knowing we were crossing a line, but powerless to stop. The rational part of my mind was screaming warnings, but but my heart was already falling. When the bar finally announced last call, reality intruded like cold water. Adam reluctantly released my hand, and we both sat back, the spell temporarily broken. I should go, I said, though every fiber of my being wanted to stay. So should I, Adam agreed, but neither of us moved. Finally, he pulled out his phone. May I have your number? I'd like to see you again, soon. I gave it to him without hesitation, watching as he entered it into his contacts. When he handed me his phone to do the same, our fingers brushed again, and that electric current passed between us once more. As we stood to leave, Adam stepped closer, close enough that I could feel the heat of his body, smell his intoxicating cologne. For a moment, I thought he might kiss me right there in the bar. Instead, he reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind my ear, his fingers lingering against my cheek. Until tomorrow, Sophia, he murmured, and I knew with absolute certainty that tomorrow couldn't come soon enough. I watched him walk away, my heart racing, my skin still tingling where he'd touched me. That night, I lay in my hotel bed staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment, every word, every stolen glance. I knew I was in trouble. I knew this man, this married, separated, devastatingly attractive man, was going to turn my world upside down. What I didn't know was just how far I'd be willing to go to keep him. The next morning came too slowly and too quickly all at once. I found myself checking my phone every few minutes, wondering when Adam would text, if he would text. By noon, I was questioning everything. Had I imagined the intensity between us? Had I misread the signals? Then my phone buzzed. Good morning, beautiful. Coffee. I know a quiet place. Adam. My heart hammered against my ribs as I typed back, yes, when and where. 20 minutes later, I was sitting across from him in a small cafe tucked away from the main conference crowds. Adam looked even more handsome in daylight, his dark hair slightly tousled, his eyes bright with something that looked like relief when he saw me. I wasn't sure you'd come, he admitted, reaching across the small table to touch my hand. I wasn't sure I should, I replied honestly, but I didn't pull away from his touch. That first coffee stretched into lunch. Lunch became a walk through the hotel gardens. Before I knew it, the afternoon was gone, and we were making plans to meet again the next day. The pattern continued for the rest of the conference. Every spare moment, we found excuses to be together. Adam would text me between his meetings, and I'd find myself abandoning my own schedule just to steal another hour with him. On our last night, he took me to dinner at an intimate restaurant away from the hotel. The conversation flowed like wine, and I found myself learning more about the man behind those intense eyes. Sarah and I, we haven't really talked in months. Adam confided over dessert, his fingers playing with his wedding ring. We live in the same house, but we're strangers. She has her book clubs and charity events, and I have my work. We've become polite roommates. I watched him twist that ring, guilt, and sympathy warring in my chest. That must be lonely. It was, he said, looking up at me with those piercing eyes. until I met you. The drive back to the hotel was charged with unspoken tension. Adam's hand rested on the gear shift, close enough that I could feel the warmth radiating from his skin. When he parked in a secluded corner of the hotel lot, neither of us moved to get out. "Sophia," he said, his voice rough with emotion. I turned to face him, and suddenly he was closer, his hand cupping my cheek with infinite tenderness. When his lips met mine, the world stopped. The kiss was soft at first, tentative, as if he was giving me a chance to pull away. I didn't. Instead, I melted into him, my hands fisting in his shirt as he deepened the kiss. He tasted like wine and promises, and when we finally broke apart, we were both breathing hard. "I should feel guilty," I whispered against his lips. "So should I," he replied, but his thumb traced my lower lip with reverent attention. "But I can't bring myself to regret this, to regret you." The conference ended, but we didn't. Adam and I exchanged numbers, emails, every form of contact possible. Within a week, he was finding excuses to travel to my city for business meetings. Our first real date happened 3 weeks later. Adam told Sarah he had to stay overnight for client presentations. Instead, he took me to a rooftop restaurant where we could see the city lights stretching endlessly below us. "I've never done anything like this before," I confessed, as we shared a bottle of wine. "Neither have I," Adam said, his hand finding mine across the table. "I've been faithful to Sarah for 15 years, even when things got bad. But with you, Sophia, you make me feel alive again. The guilt should have consumed me. I should have walked away right then. But looking into his eyes, seeing the vulnerability there, feeling the way my heart raced every time he said my name, I was already too far gone. Our text messages became the highlight of my days. Good morning messages that made me smile before I was fully awake. Photos of his coffee cup next to mine, taken hours apart, but somehow feeling connected. Late night conversations that lasted until dawn, where we shared dreams and fears and pieces of our souls. Sarah asked where I've been spending so much time. Adam texted one evening, "What did you tell her?" I replied, my stomach clenching with anxiety. That work has been demanding. More client dinners, more overnight trips. She didn't even look up from her magazine. I stared at that message for a long time, guilt washing over me in waves. But then he sent another text. "I know this is complicated, Sophia, but I can't stop thinking about you. I don't want to stop." Neither did I. Our meetings became more frequent, more elaborate. Adam would book hotel rooms under assumed names, claiming business trips that didn't exist. We'd spend stolen afternoons talking for hours, sharing meals, learning each other's bodies through innocent but increasingly intimate touches. One rainy Thursday, as we sat in his car outside yet another discreet cafe, Adam's phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. "She's asking if I'll be home for dinner," he said, his jaw tightening as he read the message. "Will you be?" I asked, though part of me didn't want to know the answer. Adam looked at me, his eyes dark with conflict. I told her I had a client emergency, that I might be late, He was choosing me over her, even if it was just for a few more hours. The knowledge should have horrified me. Instead, it sent a thrill through my veins that I couldn't deny. I'm making him lie to his wife, I thought, watching Adam type a response to Sarah. I'm making him betray his family. But when he finished texting and reached for my hand, when he looked at me with such raw need and affection, all my noble intentions crumbled. You're not making me do anything, Sophia, Adam said, as if reading my thoughts. I'm choosing this, choosing you. I know it's selfish, I know it's wrong, but I've never felt this way about anyone. Not even Sarah, not even in the beginning. His thumb traced circles on my palm, sending shivers up my arm. You make me remember who I used to be before I got lost in that house, in that marriage that died years ago. I squeezed his hand, my heart breaking and soaring simultaneously. Adam, I know we can't keep this up forever, he continued. I know something has to change. Those divorce papers are still sitting on my desk, unsigned, but every time I think about signing them, I think about you, about us, and I wonder if maybe he didn't finish the sentence, but I heard it anyway. Maybe we could have a real chance. Maybe this wasn't just an affair, but the beginning of something more. The rain drummed against the car windows, cocooning us in our own private world. In that moment, I made a choice that would change everything. I leaned across the console and kissed him, pouring all my conflicted emotions into that single gesture. When we broke apart, Adam rested his forehead against mine. What are we doing, Sophia? I don't know, I whispered back, but I can't stop. Share this video with someone who needs to hear this story. Sometimes the heart wants what it wants, even when we know it's wrong. As I watched Adam drive away that evening, his taillights disappearing into the rain-soaked night, I realized I was no longer the same woman who had walked into that hotel bar months ago. I was someone who could fall in love with a married man, someone who could make him choose between his family and his happiness, someone who was about to discover just how far love could push a person to go. The call came 3 days later. I was in my office, staring at quarterly reports that might as well have been written in a foreign language, when Adam's name lit up my phone screen. Meet me tonight, he said without preamble. His voice was different, rougher, more desperate. There's a place called the Blue Moon Motel on Route 47, about 30 miles outside the city. Room 237. My heart hammered against my ribs. Adam, are you sure about this? I've never been more sure of anything in my life. The raw honesty in his voice made my breath catch. I can't pretend anymore, Sophia. I can't go home and sit across from Sarah at dinner, making small talk about her book club, while all I can think about is you. I closed my eyes, knowing I was about to cross a line I could never uncross. What time? 8 o'clock. I'll be waiting. The Blue Moon Motel was exactly what you'd expect. A relic from the 1960s, with faded neon signs and rooms that had seen better decades. But as I parked my car in the shadows behind the building, my hands trembling on the steering wheel, it felt like the most important destination of my life. Room 237 was at the end of the row, tucked away from prying eyes. I knocked twice, softly, and Adam opened the door immediately. He'd been waiting by the window, watching for me. "You came," he breathed, as if he doubted I would. "Did you really think I wouldn't?" He pulled me inside, his hands cupping my face with such tenderness it made my chest ache. The room was dimly lit by a single bedside lamp, casting everything in warm amber tones. He'd brought wine, a bottle of the same Pinot Noir we'd shared that first night in the hotel bar. "I keep thinking about that night," he said, pouring 2 glasses with slightly unsteady hands. "How you looked at me across that bar like you could see right through all my pretenses." I took the wine, but didn't drink. Instead, I set it aside and stepped closer to him. I still can. When he kissed me this time, there was no hesitation, no guilt holding us back. His lips were warm and desperate, tasting faintly of the whiskey he'd probably needed for courage. My hands found the buttons of his shirt, my fingers fumbling with nervous energy. "Sophia," he whispered against my neck, his breath hot against my skin. "Are you sure? Because once we do this—" "I know," I interrupted, my voice barely above a whisper. "I know what this means." What happened next felt inevitable, like the final notes of a symphony we'd been composing together for months. Every touch was electric, every kiss a promise we were making without words. Adam's hands explored my body with reverent attention, as if he was memorizing every curve, every response. When he lifted me onto the bed, his eyes never left mine. "I want to remember everything about this moment," he said, his voice thick with emotion. The passion that followed was unlike anything I'd ever experienced. It wasn't just physical. It was emotional, spiritual, transformative. Every barrier between us crumbled away until there was nothing left but raw honesty and need. Adam whispered my name like a prayer, his hands tangling in my hair as we moved together in perfect rhythm. Afterward, we lay entwined in the tangled sheets, our breathing slowly returning to normal. Adam's fingers traced lazy patterns on my bare shoulder, and I could feel his heartbeat against my cheek, where my head rested on his chest. "I love you," he said suddenly, the words hanging in the air between us like a confession. I lifted my head to look at him, seeing vulnerability in his eyes that took my breath away. "Adam, I know I have no right to say that. I know this whole situation is impossible, but I need you to know what I feel for you isn't just desire or escape or midlife crisis. It's love, real, terrifying, life-changing love." Tears stung my eyes as I pressed my palm against his cheek. "I love you too. God help me, I love you too." He closed his eyes and leaned into my touch. "I've been dead inside for so long, Sophia. Sarah and we've been roommates for years, going through the motions. But with you, I feel alive again. I feel like myself again." "What are we going to do?" I asked, the weight of reality beginning to creep back in. Adam pulled me closer, his arms tightening around me protectively. "I'm going to leave her. I know I've been saying that for months, but I mean it now. After tonight, after this, I can't go back to pretending. When? Soon. I just need time to figure out the logistics, the house, the finances, telling her family. Sarah's sister is getting married next month, and I don't want to ruin that for her. But after that, I promise you, I'll sign those divorce papers. I wanted to believe him. Lying there in his arms, feeling more complete than I ever had before. It was easy to believe that love could conquer everything, that what we just shared was worth the pain it would cause. We can meet here, he continued, his voice gaining strength. Every week, maybe twice if I can manage it. I'll tell Sarah I'm taking on more consulting work, traveling more. She won't question it. She's so wrapped up in her own life these days. The plan felt both thrilling and heartbreaking. So we become those people, I said quietly. Meeting in motel rooms, living for stolen moments. But only temporarily, Adam insisted, tilting my chin up so I was looking at him. This isn't forever, Sophia. This is just the bridge to our real life together. I kissed him then, tasting the promise on his lips. Outside, I could hear the distant hum of traffic on Route 47. People going about their normal lives, while mine had just been turned completely upside down. We made love again before we left, slower this time, savoring every touch. When Adam finally walked me to my car, the night air felt different against my skin, charged with possibility and heavy with consequence. I'll call you tomorrow, he promised, his hands reluctant to let me go. Adam, I turned back to him before getting in my car. No regrets, he smiled, and for the first time in months, it reached his eyes completely. How could I regret the best night of my life? As I drove home through the empty streets, my body still humming with the memory of his touch, I felt like a completely different person than the woman who had driven out here just hours ago. I was no longer someone who wondered what it would be like to be with Adam. I was someone who knew exactly what it felt like to be loved by him. And despite everything, the lies, the betrayal, the impossible situation we'd created, I couldn't bring myself to feel guilty about it. Not yet. All I could feel was the lingering warmth of his hands on my skin and the echo of those 3 words that had changed everything. I love you. The next 2 months became a masterclass in deception, and I was an eager student. Adam and I fell into a rhythm that felt as natural as breathing and as dangerous as walking a tightrope. Tuesdays and Fridays became sacred, our designated days at the Blue Moon Motel, where room 237 had become our private sanctuary. Adam would tell Sarah he had client dinners or late meetings, while I crafted elaborate stories about girls' nights and yoga classes I never attended. You're glowing lately, my best friend Emma commented over lunch one Tuesday afternoon, just hours before I was supposed to meet Adam. New skincare routine. I nearly choked on my salad. Just eating better, I guess. Or maybe it's that mysterious new workout schedule you mentioned. She raised an eyebrow. You've been so secretive lately, Sophia. What's really going on? My phone buzzed with a text from Adam. Room 237. Can't wait to hold you. My cheeks flushed just reading it. Nothing exciting, I lied, shoving my phone into my purse. Just trying some new routines. You know how it is. But Emma's suspicious look followed me all the way to the parking lot. The lies were multiplying like rabbits, each one requiring 3 more to support it. Adam had become equally creative, suddenly developing an interest in evening gym sessions and weekend golf tournaments that existed only in his imagination. He'd even started leaving his wedding ring in his car before our meetings, a small silver circle of guilt that he'd slide back on afterward like nothing had happened. I hate that thing, I whispered one afternoon, watching him twist the ring back onto his finger. As we prepared to leave room 237, Adam paused, looking down at the band that caught the afternoon light streaming through the motel curtains. Soon, he promised, but there was something in his voice that made my stomach clench. The divorce papers are still sitting on my desk at home. Sarah just. She needs more time to process everything. How much more time? The question slipped out sharper than I intended. He pulled me close, his hands warm against my bare shoulders. Don't doubt this, Sophia. Don't doubt us. What we have is real. That ring is just a formality now. I wanted to believe him. God, how badly I wanted to believe him. But doubt had a way of creeping in during the quiet moments, like when I was alone in my apartment, staring at the ceiling at 2 a.m., wondering what Sarah was doing. Was she lying awake too, sensing something was wrong? Did she notice the way Adam's phone was always face down now? Or how he'd started taking longer showers when he came home? The closest we came to being caught happened on a rainy Thursday evening. Adam had told Sarah he was working late on the Morrison account, a client that actually existed, which made the lie feel more solid somehow. We were at Romano's, a little Italian place 2 towns over, sharing a bottle of Chianti, and pretending we were a normal couple on a normal date. I keep thinking about that weekend in the Berkshires you mentioned, I was saying, twirling pasta around my fork. When do you think we could? Adam's face went white. He was staring over my shoulder, his wine glass frozen halfway to his lips. What is it? I started to turn around. Don't look, he whispered urgently. Sarah's friend Janet just walked in. She knows me. My heart hammered against my ribs. What do we do? Just act normal, professional. You're a client. His voice was steady, but I could see the panic in his eyes. If she comes over, you're thinking about refinancing your condo. And we sat there for what felt like hours, Adam's back rigid as he tried to shield me from view. I pushed my food around my plate, suddenly nauseous. This was what our love looked like in the real world: fear and lies and cold pasta. Janet never approached our table, but the magic of the evening was broken. We left separately, Adam waiting 10 minutes before following me to the parking lot. I'm sorry, he said, pulling me against his chest in the shadow between 2 cars. I'm so fucking sorry, Sophia. It's not your fault, I whispered into his shirt, breathing in his cologne mixed with the scent of rain. But even as I said it, I wondered if that was true. The near miss should have been a wake-up call. But instead, it seemed to intensify everything. The danger made every stolen moment more precious, every touch more electric. We started taking bigger risks, longer dinners, weekend afternoon meetings, text messages that were increasingly bold. One Friday afternoon at the motel, Adam's phone rang while we were lying tangled in the sheets, our bodies still humming from lovemaking. Sarah's name flashed on the screen, and without thinking, I caught a glimpse of his wallpaper. A photo of Sarah laughing at what looked like a beach vacation, her hair caught in the wind, her smile radiant. Something twisted in my chest. Adam declined the call and tossed the phone aside, but I couldn't shake the image. In that photo, Sarah looked happy. Really, genuinely happy. Not like someone whose marriage had been dead for years. She looks. I started, then stopped. She looks what? Adam's fingers traced lazy patterns on my bare shoulder. Happy. In your wallpaper photo, she looks really happy. Adam was quiet for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was careful, measured. That was taken 2 years ago, Sophia. Before everything fell apart. Before we became strangers living in the same house. But you still keep it as your wallpaper. I keep forgetting to change it, he said quickly. Too quickly. It doesn't mean anything, but something in his tone made me wonder if that was entirely true. Later that evening, alone in my apartment, with takeout Chinese growing cold on my counter, I found myself staring at my own reflection in the bathroom mirror. The woman looking back at me had flushed cheeks and kiss-swollen lips, hair still mussed from Adam's hands. She looked like someone who was deeply, desperately in love. She also looked like someone who was falling apart. My phone buzzed with a text from Adam. Missing you already. Tuesday can't come fast enough. I typed back, me too, and meant it with every fiber of my being. But as I hit send, I caught sight of myself in the mirror again, and for just a moment, I didn't recognize the woman staring back at me. Who was I becoming? And more terrifying still, was this really love? Or was I just addicted to the thrill of being someone's beautiful secret? The questions followed me into sleep, where I dreamed of wedding rings and motel rooms, and a woman with windswept hair who looked far happier than any woman whose marriage was supposedly over. But when Tuesday morning arrived, I was already planning what to wear to room 237. Tell me your wildest relationship story in the comments. I promise mine gets even crazier from here. The first sign something was wrong came 3 weeks later, during what should have been another perfect Tuesday at the Blue Moon Motel. Adam seemed different that afternoon, distracted, constantly checking his phone, even while we were tangled together in the twisted sheets of room 237. His hands shook slightly as he lit his cigarette afterward, and when I asked if everything was okay, he just pulled me closer and buried his face in my hair. Sarah's been asking questions, he finally whispered against my neck about my schedule, my phone calls. She even went through my credit card statements. My blood turned to ice water. What kind of questions? Where I was last Thursday, when I said I had that client dinner. She called the restaurant. They had no reservation under my name. He sat up, running both hands through his hair. I covered by saying I mixed up the days, but Sophia, she's suspicious, really suspicious. I watched him pace naked around our small motel room, his wedding ring catching the afternoon light, filtering through the cheap curtains. He still wore it to every meeting, slipping it off only when we were alone together. Maybe we should cool things down for a while, I suggested, though the words felt like glass in my throat. No, the intensity in his voice surprised us both. No, I can't, I won't. She's just going through a phase. She'll stop paying attention soon enough. But Sarah didn't stop paying attention. If anything, she became more vigilant. The following week, my friend Emma dropped by my apartment with coffee and bagels, settling into my kitchen with that particular look that meant she had something important to discuss. Okay, so don't get mad, she began, pulling out her phone. But I was scrolling through LinkedIn yesterday, and I saw something weird. She turned her screen toward me, and my heart stopped. It was Adam's profile picture, professional, smiling, and unmistakably the man I'd been meeting twice a week for months. But that wasn't what made my hands tremble as I reached for the phone. It was his status. Married to Sarah Chen Morrison. Not separated, not divorced, married. Emma, I can explain. Sophia, please tell me you're not sleeping with this guy. Her voice was gentle but firm. Because I did some digging, and his wife Sarah. She works at that marketing firm downtown, the one that did our company's rebrand last year. And from what I can see, they look pretty damn happy together. She scrolled through more photos, recent ones. Adam and Sarah at a charity gala last month, his arm around her waist. Sarah posting about their date night just 2 weeks ago, a photo of them at brunch this past Sunday, both laughing at something off camera. The same Sunday Adam had told me he was dealing with divorce paperwork and couldn't see me. He told me they were separated, I whispered. He said he was filing for divorce. Emma's expression softened with pity. Honey, I'm looking at a woman who posted date night with my amazing husband, literally 3 days ago. I felt like I was drowning. Every tender moment, every whispered, I love you, every promise about our future together. It was all built on lies. Not just the lies Adam told Sarah, but the lies he'd been telling me. You have to end this, Emma said quietly, before someone gets really hurt. But it was already too late for that. The next morning, I woke to 17 missed calls from Adam. When I finally called him back, his voice was tight with panic. She hired a private investigator, he said without preamble. Sarah hired a fucking private investigator, Sophia. She has photos. My apartment suddenly felt too small, the walls pressing in around me. Photos of what? Us at the motel, getting into my car together, kissing in the parking lot. His breathing was ragged. She confronted me last night, threw them right on the kitchen table while I was eating dinner. I sank onto my couch, legs suddenly unable to support me. What did you tell her? I denied everything. Said you were a business associate, that the photos were taken out of context, that the investigator got the wrong idea. There was a long pause. I don't think she believed me. Of course, she didn't believe him. No one would believe such obvious lies when faced with photographic evidence. Adam, maybe it's time to tell her the truth. About us, about how you feel. No, his voice cracked. You don't understand. Sarah's not just my wife, her family has connections to every major client I have. If this gets out, if we divorce and it's messy, I could lose everything. My job, my reputation, my entire career. And there it was, the real reason he'd been lying to me too. It wasn't love that made him hesitate to leave Sarah. It was money, security, social standing. So what are you saying? I asked, though I already knew. I'm saying we need to be more careful, way more careful. Maybe meet somewhere different, take separate cars. Adam, stop. The words came out steadier than I felt. Just stop. I hung up before he could respond, then immediately turned off my phone. But even in the silence of my apartment, I could still hear Emma's words echoing. Before someone gets really hurt. It was Wednesday afternoon when Sarah showed up at my office. I was reviewing quarterly reports when my assistant knocked and peeked her head in. Sophia, there's a woman here to see you. She says it's personal. The moment Sarah walked through my door, I knew who she was, not just from the photos I'd seen on Adam's phone, but from something deeper. The way she carried herself, the intelligence in her eyes, the quiet strength that radiated from her even now, when she had to be falling apart inside. She was beautiful in a way that was completely different from me, where I was all curves and bold colors. She was elegant lines and understated sophistication. Her dark hair was pulled back in a perfect chignon, her navy suit impeccable, despite the circumstances that had brought her here. You must be Sophia, she said calmly, closing the door behind her. I'm Sarah Morrison. I think we need to talk. She set a manila envelope on my desk. The same kind of envelope that had probably held those damning photographs of Adam and me. Her hands were steady, but I could see the slight tremor in her fingers as she opened it. My husband told me you were just a business associate, she continued, her voice never wavering. That these photos were taken out of context, that there was nothing going on between you two. She spread the images across my desk like tarot cards, revealing my future. There we were in black and white, Adam's hands in my hair, my body pressed against his car, the unmistakability of two people who were definitely not conducting business. But I think we both know that's not true, don't we? I stared at the photos, seeing our relationship through Sarah's eyes for the first time. We looked desperate, reckless, two people so consumed with their own desires that they'd forgotten other people existed. When I finally looked up, Sarah was watching me with an expression I couldn't quite read. Not anger, at least not entirely. Something more complex. Something that looked almost like understanding. "So," she said quietly, settling into the chair across from my desk, "why don't you tell me exactly how long you've been sleeping with my husband?" The silence stretched between us like a taut wire, ready to snap. Sarah's question hung in the air, and I could feel my carefully constructed world beginning to crumble around the edges. I started, then stopped. What could I possibly say? That it wasn't what it looked like. The photographs spread across my desk told a story that no words could rewrite. Sarah leaned back in her chair, her composure still intact, but something dangerous flickering in her eyes. "Let me help you," she said softly. 3 months, 6, a year. My hands trembled as I reached for my coffee cup, needing something to do with them. The liquid had gone cold, bitter on my tongue. 4 months, I whispered. She nodded slowly, as if confirming something she already knew. 4 months of my husband coming home late. 4 months of mysterious business dinners and weekend conferences that never seemed to exist when I called his office. Her voice remained steady, but I caught the slight crack on the last word. "Sarah, please," she held up a hand. "Let me finish." 4 months of him being distant, distracted. 4 months of me wondering what I'd done wrong, if I wasn't pretty enough anymore, if our marriage was falling apart. She picked up one of the photographs, the one of Adam kissing me against his car. 4 months of him making me feel like I was going crazy for being suspicious. The guilt hit me like a physical blow. I'd been so focused on what Adam and I had together, so consumed by our stolen moments and whispered promises, that I'd never really thought about her. The real woman behind the name he rarely mentioned. The wife he claimed didn't understand him. "He told me you were separated," I said, the words tumbling out before I could stop them. "He said the divorce papers were already drawn up, that you were just waiting to sign them." Sarah's laugh was sharp, bitter. "Separated." She shook her head. "We just celebrated our 15th wedding anniversary last month. We went to that little French restaurant downtown, Le Bernardin. He gave me this." She held up her left hand, where a new diamond eternity band sparkled next to her wedding ring. My stomach dropped. Le Bernardin. That was where Adam had told me he was having a business dinner the night he'd texted me that he missed me, that he wished he was with me instead. But the papers. I started weakly. "What papers?" Sarah's voice turned hard. "There are no divorce papers, Sophia. There never were. We've been trying to have a baby." The words hit me like ice water. A baby. While I'd been fantasizing about our future together, about the life we'd build when he finally left his unhappy marriage, Sarah had been planning to expand their family. "We've been seeing a fertility specialist," she continued, her voice growing quieter. "Dr. Martinez at the Women's Center on 5th Street. Adam comes with me to every appointment. He holds my hand during the procedures, tells me everything's going to be okay." Her composure finally cracked, tears threatening at the corners of her eyes. The same hands that have been touching you. I felt sick, physically, violently sick. All those times, Adam had canceled our plans at the last minute, claiming work emergencies or family obligations. All those times, he'd seemed distracted during our conversations, checking his phone constantly. I thought it was guilt about leaving his wife. Instead, he'd been juggling two completely different lives. I made him betray his family, I whispered, the confession ripping from somewhere deep in my chest. I knew he was married, but I couldn't help myself. God, Sarah, I'm so sorry, I thought. He made me believe that he loved you. Sarah's voice was gentle now, almost pitying. That you were special, that no one had ever made him feel the way you did. I nodded, unable to speak. He's good at that, she said quietly, making women feel like they're the center of his universe. You're not the first, Sophia. The room seemed to tilt around me. What? Sarah reached into the manila envelope and pulled out another photograph. This one older, grainier. It showed Adam with another woman, brunette, maybe mid-30s, in what looked like a hotel lobby. Their body language was unmistakable. Rebecca Chen. About 2 years ago, she worked for one of his clients. Sarah set the photo next to the ones of Adam and me. Before her, there was Jennifer Walsh, a paralegal at his law firm. Another photo joined the collection. And before her, Lisa Martinez, yes, related to our fertility doctor. That's actually how I found out about her. I stared at the photographs, seeing the pattern I'd been blind to. Different women, different locations, but the same intimate gestures. The same look in Adam's eyes that I thought was reserved just for me. He has a type, Sarah continued conversationally. Successful, independent women who don't ask too many questions. Women who are satisfied with stolen moments and secret phone calls. Women who believe they're saving him from an unhappy marriage. My coffee cup slipped from my numb fingers, shattering against the floor. The sound seemed to echo in the sudden quiet. Each time, he tells them the same story, Sarah went on, seemingly unbothered by the mess, that we're separated, but still living together for financial reasons, that the divorce is almost final, that he just needs a little more time to make it official. She gathered the photographs back into a neat stack. He's been using that same line for 3 years. I thought about all the times Adam had asked for patience, for understanding. All the promises about our future together that always seemed just out of reach, the way he deflected whenever I brought up concrete plans or timelines. Why are you telling me this? I managed to ask. Sarah stood up, smoothing down her skirt with practiced precision. Because despite what you've done to my marriage, I don't think you're a bad person. Naive, maybe, but not bad. She paused at my office door. I stayed with him through Rebecca and Jennifer and Lisa. But this time is different. Different how? This time I'm pregnant. The words hit me like a slap. Sarah's hand moved instinctively to her still flat stomach. a gesture so active and maternal that it broke something inside me. 12 weeks, she continued. We found out right around the time he started seeing you, actually. Funny how that worked out. Her smile was sharp, cutting. I won't let him do this to our child. I won't have my baby growing up thinking this is what love looks like. She opened the door, then turned back one last time. He'll call you tonight, you know. He'll have some explanation for how I found out. Probably blame it on my jealousy or paranoia. He'll promise to leave me to choose you. He might even show you fake divorce papers this time. She shook her head sadly. But he won't leave, Sophia. He never does. And eventually, when you start asking too many questions or demanding too much of his time, he'll find someone new to save him from his terrible marriage. The door closed behind her with a soft click, leaving me alone with the broken pieces of my coffee cup and my shattered illusions. I sat there for a long time, staring at the space where the photographs had been, trying to reconcile the Adam I thought I knew with the man Sarah had just described, the Adam who whispered poetry in my ear and made me feel like the most beautiful woman in the world, the Adam who was about to become a father while planning a future with his mistress. My phone buzzed with a text message. Adam's name appeared on the screen, and my heart clenched with a mixture of longing and revulsion. Something came up at home. Sarah's being emotional about something. Can we talk later? I love you. Emotional about something, as if discovering your husband's affair was just female hysteria. As if her pregnancy and her pain and her 15-year marriage were just obstacles to our great love story. I deleted the message without responding. For the first time in 4 months, I saw Adam Morrison clearly, and I didn't like what I saw. If you think I made the right choice, leave a like. If not, tell me why in the comments. The silence in my office felt different after Sarah left. Not peaceful, but hollow, like the aftermath of an explosion when the dust is still settling and you're checking to see what survived. I didn't have to wait long to find out. Adam called 17 times that evening. 17. I watched my phone light up over and over, his name flashing like an accusation. Each ring felt like a physical blow, reminding me of every lie he'd whispered, every promise he'd made, while his pregnant wife sat at home, probably wondering why her husband was working so late again. When I finally answered on the 18th call, his voice was panicked. Sophia, thank God. Sarah's lost her mind. She's saying crazy things, threatening divorce. She's called my mother, for Christ's sake. My mother. His voice cracked with genuine distress. She found some photos or something. I need to see you. We need to talk about what we're going to do. What we were going to do. As if this disaster was something that had happened to us, rather than something we had created together. There is no we, Adam. The words felt strange in my mouth, foreign after months of believing in our impossible future. Sarah came to see me today. She told me about the others. The silence stretched so long I thought he'd hung up. Sophia, whatever she said, about Rebecca from accounting, about the intern from 2 summers ago, about how you've been using the same lies, the same script for years. My voice was getting stronger with each word. She had names, Adam, dates. She knew about the Blue Moon Motel. Another silence. Then, incredibly, he tried to charm his way out of it. Baby, you have to understand. Those women, they didn't mean anything. You're different. What we have is real. His voice took on that familiar, intimate tone that had once made my knees weak. Sarah's just trying to turn you against me because she knows I'm leaving her for you. I almost laughed. Almost. The sheer audacity of it would have been impressive if it hadn't been so pathetic. You're not leaving her, Adam. You never were. And she's pregnant. She told you that. His voice sharpened. Look, that's complicated. We can work through this. We can go away, start fresh somewhere. I've been thinking about it, and stop. I closed my eyes, trying to block out the sound of his voice, weaving another web of lies. Just stop. I know who you are now. I know what you are. I hung up and turned off my phone. The next few weeks unfolded like watching a building collapse in slow motion. Sarah followed through on her threats. She filed for divorce, and somehow word got out at Adam's company. Apparently, having affairs with multiple coworkers was frowned upon in their corporate culture. Who knew? Adam lost his job first, then his reputation. Sarah's family had money and connections, and they used both to make sure everyone in their social circle knew exactly why their marriage had ended. His mother stopped speaking to him. His brother changed his phone number. He showed up at my apartment on a Tuesday night in early December, looking like he'd been sleeping in his car. Maybe he had been. Sophia, please. You have to help me. Sarah took everything. She froze the accounts, kept the house. She's trying to destroy me. He was unshaven, wearing the same clothes I'd seen him in 3 days earlier when he'd ambushed me outside my office building. But we can start over. California, maybe, or Europe. I have some money saved from lying to your wife. I didn't let him inside. Something about seeing him there, desperate and pathetic, made everything crystal clear. From stealing time that belonged to your family. Be like this. His voice took on a wheedling quality that made my skin crawl. You love me. I know you do. We can make this work if you just. I don't love you, Adam. The words came out calm and certain, surprising us both. I never loved you. I loved the idea of you, the fantasy you sold me. But you, the real you. I shook my head. You're just a middle-aged man who lies to women to get them into bed. His face crumpled like I'd hit him. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. You're making a mistake, Sophia. What we had was special. You felt it too. What we had was an affair. What I felt was guilt and excitement that I confused for love. I stepped back, my hand on the door. Go home, Adam. Go back to your wife and beg her forgiveness. Be a father to your baby. Try to be a decent human being for once in your life. I closed the door and turned the deadbolt. That was the last time I saw him. The the months that followed were the hardest of my life. I entered therapy with Dr. Patricia Hendricks, a no-nonsense woman in her 50s who didn't let me wallow in self-pity for more than 5 minutes before she started asking the hard questions. Why do you think you were attracted to a married man, Sophia? I didn't know he was married at first, but you continued the relationship after you found out. He said he was getting divorced, but you never saw any divorce papers. You never met his lawyer. You never asked to see proof. Those sessions were brutal. Week after week, Dr. Hendricks helped me peel back the layers of self-deception and examine the ugly truth underneath. I had wanted to be chosen, to be special enough to make a man leave his family. I had confused drama and secrecy for passion. I had told myself I was the victim of his lies when the truth was, I had been complicit in every single one of them. I learned about something called trauma bonding, how the cycle of intensity and withdrawal, of promises and disappointments, can create an addictive pattern that feels like love, but is actually just emotional chaos. I learned about boundaries, about red flags, about the difference between chemistry and compatibility. Most importantly, I learned to forgive myself. It took 8 months of therapy, 3 months of complete social isolation, and more nights crying myself to sleep than I care to count. But slowly, gradually, I began to rebuild something resembling self-respect. I changed jobs, moved to a new apartment across town, and started over. I deleted Adam's number, blocked him on social media, and threw away every gift he'd ever given me. The silk scarf went in the trash. The poetry book, too. I kept nothing that reminded me of who I'd been during those 4 months when I'd lost myself completely. Sarah had her baby in the spring, a daughter. I saw the announcement in the local newspaper's birth section while I was having coffee at a cafe near my new apartment. Sarah Morrison had given birth to Emma Grace Morrison. 7 pounds, 4 ounces. Mother and baby doing well. No mention of a father. I stared at that announcement for a long time, thinking about the woman who had saved me from making the biggest mistake of my life, who had shown me the truth about Adam Morrison, even though it meant destroying her own marriage to do it. I never tried to contact her. What could I possibly say? Thank you for showing me that the man I thought I loved was actually a serial liar who would have eventually discarded me like all the others. Thank you for having the courage to leave him when I was too weak to see through his manipulations. Some debts can never be repaid. Some mistakes can only be learned from, and sometimes the most loving thing you can do for someone you've wronged is to disappear from their life completely and never cause them pain again. A year passed. 12 months of therapy sessions, of learning to recognize my own patterns, of understanding why I'd been drawn to Adam's intensity instead of repelled by his deception. Dr. Martinez helped me see that I'd confused drama with passion, chaos with excitement. I'd been addicted to the adrenaline of secrecy, mistaking it for love. By winter, I'd been promoted to senior marketing director at the nonprofit where I worked. Clean water initiatives in developing countries, work that actually mattered. My new apartment felt like home now, decorated with things I'd chosen for myself, not to impress anyone else. I'd even started dating again, though nothing serious. Coffee dates with kind men who didn't make my pulse race, who didn't send cryptic midnight texts or whisper promises they couldn't keep. It was healthier. It was boring. It was exactly what I needed. The charity gala was my idea, a fundraiser for the Clean Water Project I'd been managing. Black tie, silent auction, the works. I wore a simple navy dress, nothing that screamed for attention. I'd learned to dress for myself, not for the effect I might have on married men lurking at hotel bars. I was checking on the auction items when someone cleared their throat behind me. "Excuse me, are you Sophia Chen?" I turned to find a man in his mid-30s, tall with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. He wore his tuxedo like someone who was comfortable in formal wear, but didn't live in it. His smile was genuine, reaching his eyes. "I am, and you are, Daniel Reeves. I'm actually here because of you, in a way." He extended his hand, and I noticed he wasn't wearing a wedding ring. Old habits, I still checked. I handled Sarah Morrison's divorce case last year. She mentioned this fundraiser, said the woman who organized it was someone worth supporting. My stomach dropped. Sarah had mentioned me. She said that. Daniel nodded, seemingly unaware of the bomb he just detonated in my chest. "She said you were brilliant at your job, and that this cause meant a lot to you." She was right. I've been reading about your work in Guatemala. Impressive stuff. And I stared at him, trying to process this. Sarah had recommended me. After everything I'd done to her life, she told you about me, only professionally, Daniel said quickly. Perhaps sensing my confusion, she mentioned you worked in nonprofit marketing, that you'd organized this event. When I saw the invitation, I thought I'd check it out. I try to support causes that matter. He didn't know. Sarah hadn't told him about the affair, about Adam, about any of it. She'd simply recommended my work, like one professional supporting another. The generosity of it took my breath away. That's very kind of her to mention, I managed. We talked for 20 minutes by the auction table. Daniel was a family law attorney, specialized in divorce cases, particularly those involving children. He'd grown up in foster care himself, understood the importance of stability for kids caught in the middle of adult chaos. He was nothing like Adam. Where Adam had been all smooth confidence and charm, Daniel was thoughtful, even a little awkward. He asked genuine questions about my work, listened to the answers, remembered details. When I mentioned the well we'd just completed in a village outside Guatemala City, his face lit up with authentic interest. "That must be incredibly fulfilling," he said. "To know that your work directly impacts people's daily lives like that." It is. I found myself smiling, really smiling, for the first time in months. It's not glamorous, but it's real. It matters. The best work usually isn't glamorous, Daniel agreed. I spend most of my days in mediation rooms, helping people figure out custody schedules and asset division. Not exactly exciting. But when you help a family find a way forward that works for everyone, especially the kids, it's worth it. I thought about Sarah, about little Emma, about how Daniel had probably helped them navigate the wreckage Adam had left behind, how he'd helped Sarah build a new life for herself and her daughter. Sarah Morrison, I said carefully. How is she doing, if you can say? Daniel's expression grew warm. She's doing really well, actually. Strong woman. Emma's walking now, getting into everything. Sarah started her own consulting business a few months ago, event planning. She's got a real talent for it. Relief flooded through me. Sarah was okay. More than okay, she was thriving. I'm glad, I said, and meant it completely. The evening continued, and somehow Daniel and I kept finding ourselves in conversation. During dinner, we were seated at different tables, but he found me afterward during the dancing portion of the evening. I don't suppose you'd like to dance? He asked, offering his hand. I hesitated. The last time I danced with someone at a formal event, but Daniel wasn't Adam. There was no wedding ring to worry about, no wife at home wondering where he was, no secrets, no lies, no elaborate deceptions. Just a kind man asking for a dance. I'd like that, I said. He was a good dancer, confident, but not showy. We talked as we moved, about books we'd read, places we'd traveled, dreams we were working toward. Normal conversation. Honest conversation. Have you ever been in a complicated situation like this? Tell me in the comments. When someone from your past indirectly brings someone new into your life, and you're not sure if it's fate or just coincidence. When the evening ended, Daniel walked me to my car. I'd like to see you again, he said. If you're interested, coffee maybe. Somewhere we can actually hear each other talk. I looked at him in the parking garage lighting. No dramatic shadows, no mysterious atmosphere, just fluorescent lights and the sound of car engines. Nothing romantic about it at all. And yet, something in my chest fluttered, not the wild, desperate attraction I'd felt with Adam, but something gentler, something that felt like it might grow into something real if I let it. I'd like that too, I said. He smiled, that same genuine smile from earlier. Great. How about Thursday? There's a coffee place near the courthouse that makes excellent scones. Thursday works. He didn't try to kiss me goodnight. Didn't push for anything more than what I'd offered. Just squeezed my hand gently and said goodnight. Driving home, I thought about Sarah again. About how she'd somehow found the grace to recommend me to Daniel, despite everything I'd put her through. How she'd chosen to see the professional woman I was trying to become rather than the mistress who had nearly destroyed her marriage. I thought about Daniel too, about how different he felt from Adam, how his interest in me seemed based on who I actually was rather than on what I might give him. How he'd mentioned his work helping families, his commitment to doing right by children caught in difficult situations. Maybe this was what healthy attraction felt like, not the intoxicating rush of forbidden passion, but the steady warmth of genuine connection. Not the thrill of secrecy, but the comfort of honesty. It was terrifying in its own way. With Adam, I'd always known it would end badly. The drama had been part of the appeal. With Daniel, there was the possibility of something real, something lasting, something I could actually build a life on. That possibility scared me more than any affair ever had, but as I pulled into my apartment complex, I realized I was ready to be scared of the right things for once. Ready to risk my heart on someone who deserved it. Someone who wouldn't ask me to compromise my values or hide in the shadows. Someone who saw me as worth more than a secret. 2 years later, I stood in the same hotel ballroom where Daniel and I had first met. But this time, the charity gala felt different. I wasn't organizing it from behind the scenes. I was attending as Daniel's guest, wearing a midnight blue dress that made me feel confident rather than desperate for attention. "You look beautiful," Daniel whispered in my ear as we swayed to the soft jazz music. His hand was warm on the small of my back, steady and sure. I smiled up at him, still amazed. Felt 2 years of dating had taught me what real partnership looked like. Daniel never asked me to hide or compromise myself. He celebrated my successes at work, supported me through the difficult days when guilt about Sarah still crept in. And most importantly, he loved me for exactly who I was. "Remember when we first danced here?" I asked, my fingers tracing the lapel of his charcoal suit. "You mean when you were convinced you weren't ready for anything real?" His eyes crinkled with amusement, and I had to practically beg you to let me take you to dinner. "You didn't beg," I protested, though my cheeks warmed at the memory. "You were very persistent." "I knew what I wanted," he said simply. "I knew you were worth waiting for." If the song ended, but Daniel didn't let go of my hand. Instead, he led me toward the hotel's garden terrace, the same one where he'd first asked about my work, where he'd listened to me talk about helping families without judgment. "Sophia," he said, and something in his voice made my heart skip. "Do you remember what you told me that first night? About being afraid of wanting the right things?" I nodded, suddenly breathless. The terrace was lit with fairy lights, casting everything in a warm golden glow. "I've watched you become brave," Daniel continued, his thumb stroking across my knuckles. "Brave enough to build something real. Brave enough to trust again, to let yourself be loved properly." He reached into his jacket pocket, and my world tilted. "I know we've talked about this," he said, dropping to one knee as he pulled out a small velvet box. "But I wanted to ask you properly. Sophia, will you marry me?" The ring was perfect, a simple solitaire that caught the light beautifully, elegant without being ostentatious. Nothing like the flashy jewelry Adam used to buy me as apologies for his lies. Yes, I whispered, tears streaming down my cheeks. Yes, of course, yes. Daniel's hands shook slightly as he slipped the ring onto my finger. When he stood and kissed me, I tasted happiness pure, uncomplicated, honest happiness. 4 months later, I stood in the bridal suite of a small chapel in the mountains, adjusting the simple ivory dress I'd chosen. It had clean lines and delicate lace sleeves, beautiful but understated, nothing like the elaborate gown I'd once imagined wearing to marry Adam in some fantasy future. "You ready for this?" my sister Emma asked, smoothing an invisible wrinkle from my dress. I looked at myself in the mirror. My hair was swept up in a soft chignon, my makeup natural and glowing. I looked like myself, the best version of myself. "I've never been more ready for anything," I said, and meant it. The chapel was small and intimate, filled with people who truly mattered to us. Daniel's parents, his sister, and her children, my family, my closest friends from work. A few colleagues who had become genuine friends over the years. And in the third row, wearing a soft pink dress and holding hands with a man I didn't recognize, sat Sarah. She'd called me 2 weeks before the wedding. "I know this might seem strange," she'd said, "but I'd like to come if you'll have me. I think it would be good closure for both of us." I'd cried after hanging up, overwhelmed by her grace. She'd remarried 6 months ago to a pediatric surgeon she'd met through her pregnancy support group. From what I'd heard through mutual professional connections, she was genuinely happy. Now, as I walked down the aisle on my father's arm, Sarah caught my eye and smiled. It was a real smile, warm and forgiving. She mouthed "beautiful" and dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. But then I saw Daniel waiting for me at the altar, and everything else faded away. He was wearing a navy suit with a pale blue tie, and his face was radiant with joy and love. This was what I'd been waiting for without knowing it. A man who saw me clearly and loved me anyway, who wanted to build something lasting together. "Dearly beloved," the minister began, and I felt the weight of those words. We were beloved by each other, by the people gathered here, by the life we'd chosen to create together. When it came time for vows, Daniel spoke first. "Sophia, you taught me that love doesn't have to be complicated to be profound. You showed me that the most beautiful thing about falling in love is watching someone become their truest self. I promise to support your dreams, to be honest even when it's difficult, and to love you not despite your past, but because of how it shaped you into the incredible woman you are." I was crying openly now, not caring about my makeup. When it was my turn, I looked into Daniel's eyes and spoke from my heart. "Daniel, you showed me the difference between passion and love, between drama and happiness. You taught me that I deserve someone who chooses me every day, not just in secret moments. I promise to be your partner in everything, to build a life based on truth and trust, and to love you with the same steadiness and grace you've shown me." The rings we exchanged were simple gold bands, engraved with our wedding date. As Daniel slipped mine onto my finger, I thought about how different this felt from the desperate fantasies I'd once harbored about Adam. This was real, solid, built to last. By the power vested in me, the minister said, I now pronounce you husband and wife. Daniel, you may kiss your bride. Daniel's hands framed my face gently as he kissed me, and I felt something settle deep in my soul. This was what love was supposed to feel like, not the intoxicating rush of forbidden fruit, but the deep satisfaction of coming home. As we walked back down the aisle together, I caught Sarah's eye again. She was clapping and crying, and she mouthed, "Thank you," though I wasn't sure what she was thanking me for. Maybe for becoming the kind of woman who deserved this happiness. Maybe for proving that people could change, could grow beyond their worst mistakes. At the reception, Daniel and I danced to "At Last" by Etta James, and I finally understood what the song meant. Not just finding love, but finding the right love. Not just being wanted, but being cherished. Not just feeling passion, but feeling peace. No regrets. Daniel whispered as we swayed together. I thought about Adam, about the woman I'd been when I was with him, desperate, hidden, compromising myself for scraps of attention. I thought about the pain I'd caused Sarah, the lies I'd told myself, the way I'd nearly lost myself in someone else's deception. None, I said firmly. Everything led me here, to you, to this. I wouldn't change a thing, because the truth, I needed to learn what love wasn't before I could recognize what love was. I needed to experience the hollow thrill of being someone's secret before I could appreciate the solid joy of being someone's choice. As the evening wound down and we prepared to leave for our honeymoon, I realized that this was my real confession story, not the tale of my affair with Adam, but the story of how I found my way back to myself, and then to real love. I was no longer the woman who made men betray their families. I was the woman who had learned to demand better, who had chosen honesty over drama, who had built something beautiful from the ashes of her worst mistakes. I was Mrs. Daniel Reeves, and I had never been happier to be exactly who I was.